The media convened in Atlanta this week for SEC Media Days, and it is now spoken on what it thinks is going to happen this SEC football season. The preseason media poll has been released. Where will the Dogs finish? According to people like me, is Texas the undisputed number one in the conference this year? Alabama, LSU, South Carolina, those teams creeping up there. This is projected to be a pretty fun year in the conference. Seems like there's a little bit more quarterback talent than maybe the last couple of seasons. And pretty much a wide open field, if you ask me. You look at every single SEC schedule and you say, man, that's tough. They're going to have to play that team. They're going to have to go on the road to play this team. There's talent all over the place. I think shaping up to be a really great SEC season like last year's was. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it, and I'll pull it up on the screen for you if it will allow me. There we go. So this is the projected order of finish that we are looking at right here. Texas, number 1. Georgia, number 2. Alabama, number 3. LSU, 4. South Carolina, so on and so forth. It shows that, look, Georgia was a close second behind Texas. Now, there is so much hype going around with the Longhorns. They are the betting favorite to win the conference. If you were at Media Days this week, if you're a media member, I guess I'm not speaking to most media members, but this week the hype around Arch Manning was significant, right? Just the crowds that they drew for interviews. It was a sight to see, and the Longhorns are predicted by the media to finish number 1 in the conference at the end of the year. They're also projected to win the conference championship, as you're seeing right here. 96 points in the voting. Georgia at second with 44. So Texas versus Georgia, and Texas beating Georgia is this prediction here to win the SEC championship. They also come up with the preseason teams. Now, I will tell you how I voted in some of this. I tried to save the file and lost it, but I remember a few things in terms of the teams. But I do remember my top predicted order of finish, at least the top 5. And it is different than this. And I can give you my reasons behind why it is different. And a lot of that has to do with scheduling and just looking at a team's schedule and saying, okay, I think that their record will be roughly this. And I've got the teams towards the top of this list. I have their schedules I want to pull up, and let's walk through this. What's going to happen in the SEC football season this year? Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talking about the media voting and talking about how I voted for what I think is going to happen in the SEC this season. I think we're gearing up for a great season. Make sure you're going to dawgpost.com. What I was just showing you on the screen is our story for the voting, but we're putting up all sorts of content. Make sure you're checking it out. Make sure you're sticking with us on this channel. We're getting closer. We're getting closer to that first Kirby Smart fall camp press conference. It's got to be a little less than 2 weeks from now. I'm still waiting to get that email. Half of my life is waiting to get an email to know what's about to happen next. Without further ado, my rankings, right? So I'll pull up this again so you can look at it. But what was different for me, I put Georgia 1. Oh, how surprising, Ryan. You work for Dawg Post. You cover Georgia. You got Georgia at 1. This isn't a homer pick. Look at Georgia's schedule. All right, I'm pulling it up. I think that they're going to be 11-1 or 12-0. I really do when I look at this. Tough road games against Auburn and Tennessee. Let's say Georgia splits those. Let's say Georgia loses one of those games. Well, that's one conference loss. I think that they win all their home games. I know they've got to play Texas. They've got to play Bama, Ole Miss. But I think Georgia wins all of these conference home games. And if that's the case, then we're talking about an 11-1 football team and a team that only has one conference loss. Last year, you saw you could get into the SEC championship with 2 conference losses. It was possible. I think it'll be possible again this year. When you just think about the sheer toughness in the scheduling, the fact that all these teams are playing against each other. Now, I didn't have Texas. I think that they lose at Georgia. I think that's one conference loss. And I foresee an upset. maybe at Florida. Maybe it's A&M at home. But I kind of think that they end up with 2 conference losses as well. I had LSU as the second best team in the conference. I think that Georgia will play LSU in the SEC Championship. You have to make a prediction, right? You can't just not make a prediction. My thoughts may change once we get a few weeks into the season, and I say, okay, well, I don't think that's going to happen anymore. But right now, a little bit of a hot take, but a little bit of what I really just think. I think this LSU team is going to be really good. I think you look at the schedule. The Clemson game is a good test at the beginning of the year. Same thing for Texas at Ohio State, but those don't count against the conference. But LSU gets Florida at home. I think that they beat Ole Miss on the road. I think that they beat South Carolina at home. I think that they handle Oklahoma. Like, the only game that I look at this and I say I think LSU is going to lose that game is potentially this Alabama on the road. So that's how I looked at it that way. I put Texas at 3, and then I put Alabama at 4, bringing their schedule up. They've got to go on the road and play Georgia. I think that they lose that game. I think that at South Carolina is going to be a very tough game for them. I think that LSU is going to be a very tough game for them. At Auburn at the end of the year is going to be a tough game for them. Now, what you could see is a few teams with 2 losses. And then it'll come down to all these tiebreakers, and it won't necessarily come down to who is the best team. But right now, the way that I look at it and I see it, I think that Georgia will make it through that SEC schedule with probably just 1 loss. I don't think that any team will be undefeated in the conference. If so, I think Georgia's got the best path to do that. I know that they've got to play Texas, they've got to play Alabama, and that's tough. But all these teams got to play tough teams. I had Texas A&M at 5 behind Alabama. I think Texas A&M is a really good football team in the making. Definitely defensive talent. If Marcel Reed takes a step forward as a passer, we're talking about an electric offense. In terms of running the ball, there's not going to be a much better read option game in college football than Marcel Reed and Le'Veon Moss with those zone reads. They got Kevin Concepcion from the transfer. They got Amari Nile back. They've got more offensive talent than they did a year ago. I know they lose Noah Thomas to Georgia, but they replenished that and had what I thought was a really good season in Mike Elko's first year as the head coach. So I think that the momentum with Texas A&M is probably greater than what people realize. I get the South Carolina hype. I think that they're right there behind them. But a lot of that has to do with Lenore Sellers and not the whole team in general. I know that they've got Nick Harbor. I know we're talking about Dylan Stewart on the defensive side of the ball, but I just don't know. I think that Georgia will play LSU in the SEC Championship. That's a little bit of a hot take because the overwhelming prediction is Texas versus the Dogs. Alabama got more votes than LSU in this thing. But look, here's why, and I'll bring these teams back up, going back over to dogpost.com. We'll bring it back up here. Lenore Sellers got first team. I had Garrett Nussmeier on my first team and Lenore Sellers on second team. Nussmeier is the only quarterback in college football that's returning who threw for 4,000 yards last year. He has probably the best wide receiver trio in the country. It's between Ohio State and LSU for that, but Aaron Anderson, Nick Anderson, and Barryon Brown, that's a very tough trio to deal with on the outside. Couple that with a pretty good running back in Caleb Durham. This offense, which has NFL offensive linemen, looks to be pretty dangerous, if you ask me. They've got some top-end talent on the defensive side of the ball. It's go time for LSU. It's go time for Brian Kelly. And the trend for these second-year starters for these LSU quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, has been great success, has been Heisman success. I think that we see a similar type of season from Garrett Nussmeier. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in college football. I think that you see an LSU offense that is very difficult to deal with. You see this first-team defense, that's where you're going to see more Georgia guys. All right, they spelled Christian Miller's name wrong. That's bad. This is a copy and paste job on Dean's part, so Dean didn't type that out. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. I'll go in there and fix that. First team littered with Georgia guys for special teams. Brett Thorson at punter, Peyton Woodring as the place kicker and the kickoff specialist, Zachariah Branch as the return specialist and the all-purpose player. I did put Zachariah Branch and some of the Georgia guys in that regard because, look, they have good special teams players. But when I go back and I think about that list and I think about Texas is the overwhelming favorite, it's about Arch Manning. That's what this is about. He'll be throwing to Ryan Wingo. He'll be throwing to DeAndre Moore. But this offense is going to look a little bit different. They get Travion Wisner back. They get C.J. Baxter back from injury. The projected RB1 from a year ago who got hurt before the season even started. They've got some serious talent on defense. I think that's led by Anthony Hill, Michael Taffy in the secondary. But this is a team that, as much as anyone, is going through a lot of transition and has question marks. But Arch Manning is the reason why people are hyped about Texas. I don't think that their roster is necessarily better. Like, all of these teams at the top are very similar in terms of their talent. That's Georgia included. I think LSU's got what it takes scheduling-wise and talent-wise, and I think the same thing for Georgia, and that's where my reasoning came from. Texas may be better, but I just got a feeling about Georgia and LSU in this SEC championship. It's my hot take for this summer, and we'll see if that ends up coming to fruition. But that is the voting. You saw that. I brought up the teams a little bit. I don't think there's as much value in looking at the projected first, second, third team and all that, just because there's a lot of homerism in that. There's less homerism in the standings, which I disagree with to an extent. What do you think about my predictions? What do you think about the overall SEC predictions? Dawgpost.com. Make sure you're checking that out. Season's coming up really shortly. We'll see you there.